Okay. All right, Kieran. Yeah, so this is fun to do this interview. You and I had met. You know what? Who had introduced us? I can't even remember. I usually pick like a half a dozen people that could have introduced us, but do you remember who connected us originally?
We met at one of Sid's networking events.
Through Sid. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sid's a one of those, connection zero guys too. He connects everybody. So, yeah. And then you introduced me to Josh and Eric and brought me on PodMAX, and now we're here doing an interview about you, which is cool. So why don't you talk about, for the listeners, even though I know your background, what your background is and what you're doing now, because you're doing a lot of coaching, and then we can have a conversation about, the stuff that you're dealing with customers and stuff.
Cool. Yeah. So my background, I'll kind of start back in childhood, and we'll quickly kind of work up to present day. But
okay.
I've always been kind of a shy person, always very observant, kind of noticing when I was a kid, what was the things that got people in trouble? What were the things that got people rewarded and kind of respected? I've always kind of studied human behavior, human psychology. At the same time, I was always entrepreneurial. I started selling candy in school from a very young age. I would buy the bulk Costco Airheads and other candies and mark up the prices and sell them to my classmates. I pretty much had a monopoly on the South Amboy Elementary School.
That's so funny.
And
you were like the go-to guy, like go to Kieran, he'll hook you up.
I was the go-to guy, and depending on how much I liked the person, the price might change. So not proud of those business practices from back in the day, but
funny.
It's what it
was, right? Doing. You always knew the guy who had all this stuff in his locker, and he could hook you up with whatever you're looking for, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so after that, I kind of followed the traditional path. I focused on getting good grades in school, get into a good high school, get good grades in high school, get into a good college.
Right.
Same thing in college. And then eventually found myself in a great job after graduating from undergrad, where I studied, again, organizational psychology. So kind of this mix between human behavior and business and how organizations work.
And if I remember, you went to Davidson, right?
Davidson, right. Yeah. So if anybody is a basketball fan, Steph Curry.
Steph Curry came out of Davidson. Yep.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
And so after that, I found myself in a corporate job. I was in a managerial role very young. So I was in an operations role. I was doing project management, people management, and operations management, really focusing on improving processes and making the company more efficient. 2 to 3 years into that experience, I knew, all right, this is not what I want to be doing long-term. So after some soul searching for about a year, I went ahead and realized, again, I've always been entrepreneurial. I know I want to start a business by the time I'm 30. I also love working with people and kind of drawing the potential out of them and helping them get out of their own way and just realize they're capable of way more than they're actually giving themselves credit for.
Oh, always. Yeah, right. That's our biggest shortcoming.
Right. And so kind of while I was still working full-time in corporate, I actually went back to school and further studied like the skill set of coaching. How do I actually do this really well in a business setting and working with people? And so through that process, I actually realized how much I had been holding myself back since I was a kid, but even in a corporate setting, there were meetings I'd be afraid to speak up in.
Right.
There would be ideas I'd be afraid to share because I didn't want to rock the boat or take a risk. And so throughout both learning how to coach, I also grew a lot personally and was able to really go through my own growth process of, man, where am I holding myself back? Where am I preventing myself from doing new things because I'm afraid of what might happen?
Right.
And so that was a huge period of just personal exploration and personal development for myself. So from there, my wife and I were in the process of becoming foster parents. And so we were planning to start growing a family. So this kind of promise I'd made to myself of starting a business by the time I was 30, it came to a decision point of, all right, it's only going to get harder to walk away from a safe, cushy corporate job.
Of course. Right.
As the kids start coming and get older, it's going to be really hard to walk away from, the benefits, the salary, all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of a now or never, or it felt like that for me. So I decided at the end of 2019 to leave my full-time job. I had started the business in the summer that year on the side, but launched full-time at the end of last year. And so what I do now is I work with primarily faith-driven entrepreneurs and startup founders.
Okay.
So kind of ranging from small businesses all the way up to venture capital raising founders looking to build multi-million-dollar businesses.
Right. But faith and religion, big part of your life.
Yeah. So I can kind of share part of that story, but long story short, grew up Catholic, didn't really have my own faith. It was just a thing that we did. We went to church.
Yeah. Same.
Up until 5th grade.
Right.
And then it wasn't until about 5 years ago that it kind of clicked for me. Finally realized what it meant, how it should impact every area of my life, not just Sundays. Like, how does it change how I am as a husband, as an employee, as a manager, as a leader, as a business owner? And so, so that's a big part of it. But yeah, so primarily what I do is I coach in one-on-one and small groups, entrepreneurs, and help them succeed in their business, kind of get out of their own way, grow their businesses, grow revenue, gain more customers without sacrificing their family life, their mental health, physical health, spiritual health. So it's kind of this focus on two things at once and making sure that they all kind of fit together and that the entrepreneurs are firing on all cylinders.
So your clients tend to be solopreneurs, or they have, more established businesses in most cases, or, what kind of things are you helping them balance?
Yeah, it ranges. So it ranges from solopreneurs who are on the younger side, who don't really have many of the family or other types of obligations. But for them, the focus tends to be on mental health. How do you navigate the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur? How do you focus on working on the business versus working in the business, and
big challenge, right?
Think strategically while also being, executionary. And then also people who have been in the business for a while, maybe have small teams and are managing people. So then it's about balancing. All right, maybe you have a family that you care about them. You want to give them a lot of your time and energy. But you also don't want to be super stressed out with trying to figure out how to balance work because you feel like you have to be working all these crazy hours. So, sometimes I'm helping people figure out how can you get more done in less time by focusing on the things that really move the needle so that you can have more time for your family.
Little side question. Did you guys end up fostering kids?
Yeah. So we have one foster son right now. He's 11 months old.
Wow.
We've had him since he was 3.5 weeks old. So
right from the get-go.
Right from the get-go.
Right out of the wrapper.
Yeah. And then my wife is actually pregnant and due in about 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
It's a little bit less. So so we're gonna have quite the young squad here.
Yeah, you have no idea. 2 under 2 is a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So excited for that.
So when's she due? Did you say?
October 28th. So we're recording this on the 16th. So we're less
you might have to drop off here all of a sudden.
It's possible. I've got my phone next to me. Right. I have the bat signal on.
That'd be a first for the accidental entrepreneur. We went into labor during the show.
Yeah.
But I wish you the best. That's really awesome. The best things that I've ever done in my life was have kids and being able to, raise kids. My brother-in-law in Florida, he has an older stepdaughter, but a daughter who's like, I guess the age of my youngest, about 14. And they ended up fostering a little girl and eventually adopted her. And she lives with them. The mom had problems and I think died on drugs or something, but she's a sweet girl, little Zoe.
Yeah.
So, you have a big heart for stuff like that. It really opening up your home. So do you have any plans to adopt the foster child, or you think then they'll be moved? You'll be kids coming through all the time. You have like a boarding house.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Great.
Yeah, I'll say kind of what the future holds is a little bit unknown. So with foster care, it's always kind of an up in the air thing. Typically, or always, the first goal is the state wants to reunify kids with their family, whether it's biological parents or other family members.
Right.
Fosters
generally not people that gave up their child on purpose. And those are more adoption, right?
Right. Typically. Yeah. So right now it's still kind of open. There's still a chance that he is reunified with his parents or with another family member. If none of those things panned out and he was going to be put up for adoption, we would 100% love to adopt him. He was our first kid. Yeah. We love him to death. So would absolutely adopt him, but it's still kind of up in the air for right now.
Yeah, right. I don't know a lot about the foster care system, but I can't imagine that it's a great way to grow up, you can bounce around and stuff. He's probably lucky to have met you and your wife, I'm sure. All right. Well, let's stick with the business stuff. It's got to be a heavy discussion. Yeah, but you and I had met so a while back, and I know you were growing your business. So, what kind of industries are you working with? I think you said you work with a lot of tech startup entrepreneurs
Mhm.
type of people, right?
Yep. So most companies these days, if they're not service based, kind of like solopreneur, kind of more lifestyle type businesses, most of them involve tech. So tech
In some
is a
regard, yeah,
is a space where I definitely play in a lot.
yeah,
But it's I don't care necessarily about the industry that people are in, more so about kind of their own personal character traits and approach to how they want to lead themselves and run a business. So by that, I kind of mean, and the things that I look for in working with people are, obviously you have to be open to being coached to
right.
work with a coach. If you're not, it's
Then
probably
don't
not going to be a good
waste your
fit.
time. Yeah, it's not going to be a good experience for either of you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. So, people who understand the importance of mindset and the way that you think and how that impacts how you show up and then how you create results in your business. If you at least get that seed and you're open to learning more and exploring what are those areas where you might be getting in your own way, or you might be missing out on an opportunity because you're assuming that something isn't possible, or you're assuming that something won't work out. Those are some of the things that I look for in working with people
yeah,
beyond just kind of what industry are you in.
right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it is about mindset and about awareness. And that's why you need to, in a lot of cases, need a coach, because you can't get out of your own,
Mhm.
you can't step out of your own shoes and take a step back and say, well, what kind of advice? Like as a lawyer, I can give people advice all day long, and it's very easy because I'm not emotionally involved in their decision making, and I could say, listen, it's very easy, you just don't do this and do that. But it's harder when it comes to your own decision
Oh yeah.
making and seeing your own thing. And I think that people have to gain a perspective, and definitely coaching and having a mentor and somebody to guide you along and to see things from a different perspective makes, it's not just makes a lot of sense. The most successful people in business have coaches and mentors and all that type
Right.
of stuff,
Yeah.
from sports to everything else.
Exactly. That's such a great point, because you're hitting on one of the really big benefits of working with a coach. And I work with a coach myself because as a coach, I understand the benefit of it. And it's, I started out kind of being a little bit prideful, like I can figure this out on my own, or
Right.
I want to figure
It's
out
like
how to
being a
do it on my own.
psychologist. A lot of them have therapy with their colleagues.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can certainly develop yourself and you can get better at things on your own. But when you work with an unbiased person who's not attached emotionally to like the ins and outs of what you're doing, you get this objective outside perspective to bounce things off of. And even by virtue of sometimes just talking to somebody about some of the things that are going through your head, you start to clarify all this stuff that seems so messy
Right.
in your head.
Yeah.
So this outside perspective provides a lot of value. And then in addition to that, the accountability that comes with committing to somebody, hey, I'm going to do this by this
Right.
time.
Because then you got to tell them that you didn't do it or you were off.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely. You can hide behind your
Mhm.
overwhelmedness. I think people get overwhelmed with all the stuff that they may be trying to do, and they get paralyzed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Life
That's
just paralyzes.
one of the biggest problems that people that I work with face. And it's one of the reasons why we start talking in the first place, is because they get into those ruts where they're paralysis analysis, right? They're at a decision point and they're just spinning for
Right.
days or for weeks.
Right.
And instead of spinning on that decision, if you like within one conversation, 45 minutes, we can get through 3 of those big decisions that you've been,
Right.
Stuck on for weeks. And imagine how much time and effort and just heartache and headache that saves.
Oh my God. You just tear yourself apart from the inside out worrying about things. I think that
yeah.
that's a big problem, is that a lot of people worry about things and they overanalyze things, and 9 out of 10 of them are not going to happen. And they just have to make a decision. And that's where you come in, just to get them to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Even with like employees, let's say, right. And I don't really, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they understand or they trust. I got to do it myself. Your business is going to not implode because your employee screws up a little bit. Just not going to happen. There's no stories about, well, I let my assistant do this and the whole company fell apart. Like, I'm sure there's stories out there, but there's probably very few of those. And
Right.
sometimes you just got to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be absolutely right. Whoever knows what that is anyway. And people, like you said, they just got to move forward. And sometimes you need somebody to say, hey, just do this. It's not going to hurt. The water's warm, but it's not burning. Just get in. Let's give it a shot. And then I think what happens is you start to gain confidence in your decisions and you become less indecisive, right?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
That's where the relationship with a coach really works, because then you're really firing on all cylinders. And the funny thing is, you'd think from an outside perspective that, well, once I work with Kieran and I'm making my decision going, then I'll be good. And, he'll go his direction. I won't need coaching anymore. But I find that the people that are the most successful people, they continue with the coaching, right? The people that go through the therapy and they've worked out a lot of things, they want to continue to do that. And that's the reality of it, right?
Yeah. Once you experience it, it's hard for someone, typically in my experience, it's hard for people to kind of grasp and fully understand the value of what you get out of working with a coach until you actually do it. And once you do, exactly like you said, you'll kind of realize, oh, this is for sure where, like, I'm getting a return on my investment. Like whatever I'm paying to work with my coach, I'm seeing 5, 7, 10 times that in return, because I'm getting out of my own head. I'm making decisions faster. I'm making better decisions.
Right.
And then at that point you realize there's no reason to not be working with a coach.
Right.
So I've decided for myself, there will never be a time for the rest of my life that I'm not working with a coach, because it's that valuable
for your own self-development. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's like having a best friend, except that you actually have professional skills to help people with.
And they tell you, I guess a good best friend will tell you things that you need to hear, not just what you want to hear.
Right.
But some best friends, maybe you don't. Some best friends, maybe, right? Because there's something
they want to
at
hurt your
stake.
feelings, or they don't really have the skills, and they're
stake.
trying to give you advice that they think is good, but they don't have any professional skills, so they don't work in the space. So you got to be careful about. I get that. I talked to a friend and he said this. I said, "Oh, your friend is a lawyer." Oh no, they're not. They're not a lawyer. So why would you? And it's something that's completely wrong. Like you absolutely don't want to do that. You can't do it. It's too costly. It's not illegal, but whatever. And we take advice sometimes from the wrong places. So can you share some advice, tidbits, thoughts of how you coach and the things that you've seen people do and help them with? I think that would be valuable to people that are listening.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I want to touch on kind of in what you just shared around, asking a friend or someone that for advice. Oftentimes when it comes to advice that people are seeking, people most of the time already know the answer, or at least have that answer on their radar.
Right. They just want to confirm what they think is right. Right.
Right. They want, they either want validation that their thought is kind of the right direction, or the other thing that people might want is, all right, if I listen to somebody else's advice and it doesn't work out, it's not my fault. Right. And we are masters as humans. We are masters at avoiding what we perceive to be failure, because that's going to make us feel less adequate, not worthy, not good at what we're doing. And that's one of the big things that I see and that I help people work through is we take a lot of things that we see as mistakes, which that's a judgment. You can look at it as a mistake. You can look at it as a piece of data that you can now learn from.
It's perspective. Exactly.
Right. But if you're always living in fear of making a mistake with a decision, of course you're going to be stuck. It's going to take you longer to make decisions. But the reason you're stuck is because you don't want to make the wrong decision. The reason you don't want to make the wrong decision is because you're assuming what making a wrong decision means about yourself. Right. So if I assume if I make this wrong decision, that means I'm a bad entrepreneur.
Right.
Right. That's kind of the core thought underlying that fear and that being stuck.
Right.
We need to disentangle that and help you realize that's not actually true. Because as long as you operate on that assumption, you're going to be fearful of making decisions.
Of course. I mean, the best entrepreneurs make mistakes all the time. Because we're that's human nature. We make mistakes, and you can recover from those and learn from those. I think making mistakes is a better learning experience and a growing experience. You learn quicker when you fail your way to success than if you're successful all the time. And then you run into some roadblock and you're like, and your whole world collapsed. You feel like you failed. I gave it. It's all gone. I mean, I know so many people that have lost it, got it back, lost it again, got it back. I mean, it's just the reinvention wheel, I guess, in terms of how you do it. Right.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the other common things that come up in sessions with people that I work with. Imposter syndrome is a big one.
Imposter syndrome?
Yeah. Are you familiar with it?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So it's essentially this kind of habit, this thought pattern that people doubt their own skills, their accomplishments, and their talent. And they have this, again, it's related to this fear of being seen as like not knowing what they're talking about, and fear of being exposed as a fraud. So a lot of especially new entrepreneurs get this because they start seeing everybody else out there who's already built their businesses, they're already successful. And they're like, oh, I'm never going to be like them. Or, maybe they're trying to apply a process that somebody else has done and be like, it worked for them, but of course it's not going to work for me because I just don't have what it takes.
Right.
So there's a lot of that kind of self-doubt that early on that people experience a lot before they really.
But is that's a perception is what you're saying, right? So you perceive Kieran as this really successful executive coach. He's always been successful. He works with the best people in the world, and maybe that's true, but they don't know what really happened behind the curtain, right? The struggles that you went through, the failures, the doubt you had. Is that what you're saying? In terms of how you pursue the person versus what they really are?
Yes. So there's that point that you have no idea what that story is,
right?
And the work that they've done to get there.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side of that, there's also the point around what their level of success ultimately has absolutely nothing to do with you and what you're actually capable of creating in your business.
Right. There's no correlation. There's no connection, nothing.
Exactly. It's a story though, that we kind of tell in our own heads.
In our head. Yeah.
And it, again, that's something that holds people back.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with your first time doing something, like the first time you come across that problem, the first time you try to get your business started. And when it's not the first time, it's a lot easier. I was talking to somebody, we were doing an interview, I forget which interview, I do a lot of interviews on podcasts. I think I've done 100, so I can't remember everybody I spoke to, but recently we were talking about how I know what it was. I was on the Inspired Attorney with Sharon V. She's got a video podcast out of Florida. And we were talking about how with young attorneys, sometimes it's just the first time. Like don't expect too much. I'm not saying not have goals and be challenged and try hard, but it's okay to fail. Like I would expect it, and the first time you go to court, it's probably not going to go too well. Judge is going to yell at you. The other attorney's going to embarrass you. You're going to forget something. That's probably what's going to happen. Your first negotiation, you're going to get pounded into the sand. And sometimes if you have that expectation, it doesn't go as poorly as you think, right? And then the next time, we learn and we grow. And I think it's a common misconception, or not, it's not a misconception. It's a common, what's the word? Anxiety that you get from the first time you're doing something, because you just don't know what the hell you're doing. And if you took an approach that said, like you said, I'm putting myself out there, I'm going to fail. I don't know what I'm going to fail at. But it's not a question of if I fail or if I don't fail. I will fail at something, because that's what happens when what am I going to do? And that's what happens when we put ourselves out there. Relationships, right? So you're young and you're dating, you're not married, and you have a relationship and she breaks your heart, right? Whoever you're dating breaks your heart. Do you never go on a date again because you felt so vulnerable? Oh my God, they ripped my heart out of my chest. I never want to feel that way again. No, because you want to feel the success and the good feelings that go with the relationship and a love and marriage and children, all the stuff that comes with it. But you have to be vulnerable to that potential failure, to people. But, at the end of the day in business, right, you're speaking, you're doing something, it was going to boo you off the stage. I mean, you give a presentation, it doesn't go so well. Some people weren't so impressed. They're not going to boo, you suck. It's just not going to happen. I know we think about stuff like that. Yeah. So a lot of it's deflating the balloon, right? And getting them less anxious about. Yeah. A little psychology involved, I guess. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. We talk about what is that worst case scenario? Because that's where our brain goes. Worst case scenario. Right. Let's talk about, all right, what are all those things that you imagine happening?
Right.
How realistic do you think that is?
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
we talk about what are all the other reasons why that's actually not going to happen.
Right.
Right.
No,
and what's in your control that you can prepare ahead of time to make sure that those things don't happen. On the point around expecting that failure is part of the process, for any of the parents or really anybody out there, think about the first time, if you're teaching a young kid how to ride a bike, what are you going to say to them when they are like, no, I'm going to fall the first time? Like the kid's not expecting, and you're not expecting them to be able to ride the bike the first time they get on the bike.
No, you gotta
That would be
practice.
ridiculous.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe there are some kids out there, who knows, but
yeah, but they probably fall at the end of the block. Like they get
right,
going and then boom, because they
yeah.
don't have the experience about putting your feet down and stopping the brakes and what they don't.
Right. So if we wouldn't expect a kid to be able to ride a bike perfectly the first time, why would we expect ourselves anytime we do anything for the first time to do it?
Well, because we're adults and we know everything, and now we're grown up and we're supposed to we're supposed to be perfect and things like that. Yeah. But look, the most successful people definitely fail their way to success. There's nobody who's never had challenges and failed, because it's just part of life. It doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. That's where the opportunities come from. That's where the invention comes from. What do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Right.
Because you're forced to think that way. I think that if we didn't face challenges, like look at all the businesses now that have reinvented themselves or pivoted, or although somebody told me recently, she doesn't like the word pivot because if you pivot far enough, you're back where you started. So I thought that was a good point. But, change the way they're doing business, how they deal with their customers, collaborating with other local businesses or whatever. That wouldn't have happened if we didn't enter this pandemic and they weren't forced to think outside the box. Now, there's obviously bad things about what happened, right? Including the 200,000+ people that died and all the things that have come out of this. But there are, better things and silver linings and opportunities that, people who recognize that this is a way for me to now do things differently going forward are better off. I think the best business owners know, as you do, change is part of the game, right? If you recognize that things will always change and you just adjust and take advantage of opportunities, then okay. When does it stop changing? Death, I guess, right? That's basically what it is, because challenges are the sign of life.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And then I'll kind of highlight maybe the third thing that tends to come up a lot with entrepreneurs that I work with. And it's kind of, again, it's around this balance of the business and managing your time and the stress of it. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people have this picture of entrepreneurship or of running a business that it has to be this amazingly stressful, like really difficult experience. And one, it's literally not true. Like, there are people running businesses today who are not stressed out, who have incredible balance, spend as much time with their family as they want and need to. There are people who are incredibly happy running their business. They don't feel like they're constantly busy, scrambling, doing a bunch of crazy activity to feel like they're productive.
Right.
The people who are able to do that are the people who understand the things that move the needle for their business and intensely focus on those things.
Yeah, they understand their metrics, their performance indicators, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for people out there maybe who are feeling that stress, right? Who are feeling like, I feel like things are really forced right now, or I feel like things aren't as simple or as I'm not going to say effortless, because running a business isn't effortless, but you want it to kind of feel in rhythm. Like you want it to kind of feel like if you're swinging on a swing set, it takes some work to kind of get it going. Right. But then eventually, you're still doing some work and you're swinging back and forth, but the amount, like you're not straining yourself to continue swinging.
Not at all.
And so where people should want, or in my opinion, would want to get to in their business is to that place where they're in rhythm. They kind of have habits and processes that kind of dictate the way that they operate and that allow them to adapt to change.
For sure.
And so that's, when it comes to forming the right habits, both personally and in your business, that's where I spend a lot of time focusing with people, because habit formation is a huge issue.
Right.
We try to form them in ways that just don't scientifically wouldn't make sense for them to work. So that's why we're not able to stick to them. Right.
Yeah. And it drives quality of life. There's no question about it. And happiness in your business and things. I think the best analogy is like, if you're in, when a commuter jet takes off, its engines are going full force and, full throttle, because it won't get off the ground. Right. Mm-hmm. If it just did the speed at which the engines go at cruising, you'd never get off the ground. You'd just be like going like just above the treetops. And and once you get up there, the engines pull back a little bit. You're dealing with the major issues. You're watching your instruments. You're dealing with whatever else going on. And that's kind of how your business, you want your business to be. And then you come in for a landing, kind of like when you do the succession of who takes over the business or whatever. And that's kind of what it is. If you don't do the ramp up and the stuff you need to do to really get it to take off, and really learn how to work on your business, you're never going to really get to the point where you want them to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is cruising altitude,
Right.
and you don't have to put that kind of effort in. It's not like, it doesn't have to be. I think it was Mike Michalowicz, with his books, where he talks about entrepreneurial poverty. A lot of entrepreneurs that are just slaves to their business. They, they just get by. It's cash flow. They're dealing with the fires, like you said. They come in maybe with a little list of the things I want to do for the day. None of them happen because they're dealing with stuff, and they got to kind of get somebody else to do that stuff. And sometimes you can't because of money, but you got to learn how to get there, like build up your revenue so you can start to outsource things, even from a virtual standpoint. You don't have to hire a staff if you're a small business, right? I mean, especially in the tech business, they got people all over the world they're using,
Yeah.
I think those are good advice you're giving for people.
Yeah. You said that really well. Some people are like, they probably started their business partially because they wanted the freedom of kind of dictating their own schedule, being able to do something that they enjoy more, create a lifestyle for them and their family that they really want. But oftentimes it escalates into this thing where it's all consuming.
Right.
And that leads you to neglect either family or physical health or your mental health or your spiritual health. And that's like, I don't want that for people. I want people to be able to have their business running really smoothly, and then also have every other area of their life in a place where they actually want it and enjoy it. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head there.
Absolutely. Well, I think all this stuff is good. So let's put in the show notes, like how people can get in touch with you. I guess they can follow you on social media. I know you post a lot of stuff. And reach out to you. Do you offer like a consult with people to give them an idea what you do?
Yeah.
Right,
so free consults. So we can put a link to that on it's on my website. People can book some time with me. And then we can share links to social for sure.
Okay, good. So do you have any more thoughts? This is your show. So
let me see if there's anything else I want to share. Covered foster care. That's always fun.
Covered a lot of good stuff.
The business.
Yeah, there's no question about it. It's funny. I find I get a lot of business owners that come on, and I talk to them. I wonder, I never really ask them all the time, but I wonder how many of them actually work with a coach. I probably could pick out a half a dozen of them that do, just by knowing how successful they are and how on top of everything they can't be doing it themselves. Like, you're not just born that way. You need to develop those skills. And then there's other people I can definitely pick out that without insulting them need a coach. No question about it. They're not, or if they're using a coach, they ought to change coaches.
Get a new one. Yeah.
I mean, that's a big problem. I don't coach with anybody. I mentor with a lot of people because I help them. We change services. It's the way life works. And I do stuff for them. They do stuff for me. But I don't know. I know so many coaches. It's hard to pick, to find a good fit. So maybe that's a good way to kind of end things and wrap them up is that, what's your advice about somebody, if they're choosing a coach, how do you go through the process? Because everybody, if they're networking, probably knows 2,600 coaches, right? Because there's all kinds of different coaches. They're life coaches and business coaches and this and that. What's your recommendation to how somebody would evaluate you and also evaluate like actual picking a coach? What kind of road do you go down with that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So a few pieces of advice I'd share kind of in this arena. One, I'll just say, don't work with a coach who doesn't work with a coach themselves.
Okay. It's good advice.
If they don't,
like an investment guy who isn't successful in investing in what he's telling you to invest in.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. If they don't see the value in it and enough to be investing in it for themselves, that might be a red flag.
Okay.
So something to keep in mind, maybe a question to ask any coaches that you talk to.
Right.
Secondly, I'd say, you want to find the right fit. Certainly you want to understand like, what do you need? What are you looking to get out of working with a coach? And most coaches will offer, like I do, a consult that's free to just talk about their approach, to talk about the problems that you're experiencing.
Right.
And you in that conversation, you can get a feel for if you click and if you vibe with the person.
Yeah.
And you can get to know kind of their values and the way that they approach business in general. Another way to kind of get some insight and some data on their approach, their style, and if it's a good fit for you would be to just follow some of them on social media, see what kind of content they're producing, like what value
kind of
are they
leadership, right?
Exactly. What value are they putting out into the world? And do those things generally line up with where you feel like you could benefit and
right. Do you relate to them? Does it make sense to you? Yeah, that's good advice. And a lot of people you're looking for are also in the more spiritual, realm. And that's good. Now you have a target market. It doesn't have to be everybody you work with. Who wants to work with everybody? So that's.
Yeah. So primarily, yeah, like you said, faith-driven entrepreneurs. So people who
Faith-driven,
the way that they run their business is influenced and is informed by their
religion.
faith.
Right.
Yeah. Specifically, I would say between half and 75% of the people that I work with are Christian business owners and entrepreneurs.
Sure.
The remaining quarter of people are people that either don't have any faith or have a different faith, and that's like totally fine. It's not that I don't work with people or want to work
No,
with
that's just
people.
your target. Everybody needs a market. That's good advice for business owners too. You can do business with everybody, but from a marketing standpoint and a target marketing standpoint and knowing your ideal client, that doesn't mean you can't work with other people, but ideally these are the people you can service the best.
Exactly. Yep. So that's my sweet spot. Other people find me and find value in working with me, and that's great. Happy to do that. But yeah. So I think, like you had mentioned, if people are interested in learning more or talking to me or looking for some guidance or some help in navigating this process of does it make sense for me to work with a coach? If so, what path might I go down? Book a session with me, book a consult with me, and I'd be happy to talk you through that for 45 minutes to an hour, totally free, no risk at all. So feel free. We'll include a link to that with the show.
Awesome. Well, Kieran, it was a pleasure to get on the microphone with you. We talked before and we do networking together, but I appreciate it. Let me